Heyo, it's Wolfletech. So, uh, I've been getting a lot of people not understanding what COPPA is, or the Online Privacy Protection Act, or in most cases, it's actually known as a rule. But anyway, I just wanted to clear up some things that everybody's been saying. A few messages I saw on Twitter earlier today were oh, I'm going to stop YouTube because COPPA, it's going to be the end of YouTube, yada, yada, yada. Uh, so we're going to just dive into the actual regulations. So, first things first, uh, in true government fashion, Title 16, Chapter 1, Subchapter C, Part 312. Title 16 being commercial practices, Part 312 being the Children's Online Privacy Protection Rule. So, this and the contents. So, scope. This part implements the Child's Online Privacy Protection Act of 1998. 1998. Let me put that clear. This rule has been in effect for 20 years. It just gets modified as technology changes. But it's only a few pages long. So anyway, first things first. What is a child? The definitions say child means individual under the age of 13. So, if they're in 6th grade in the US or grade 6 or 6th year, I believe in Canada, it may apply. Now, keep in mind, this is a U.S. This is a U.S. act, so beware. I am not a lawyer. This is something that I have to interpret at work every single day. Just so you know, I work in a school district with kids varying from pre-K, 4K, all the way up to graduation in a U.S. Wisconsin school district. So this is why I understand COPPA from its entirety, because this is what I have to do with work every single day. So anyway, getting back in definitions. So a few things that I just want to point out to you. A child means an individual under the age of 13, so 6th grade or below. This rule applies. So a few other means. Collection means gathering of any personal information from a child by any means, including but not limited to, and you can read these all yourself. If you want to pause the video, just be my guest. But pretty much it just says anything that can identify the specific child in any way, shape, or form. That could be a username, could be a address, could be IP address. That stuff cannot be collected. Now, I'll get into more regulations later on. So, scrolling down here, the next thing that you really need to know is operator. So, operator means any person who operates a website located on the internet or an online service, and who collects or maintains personal information from or about the user or visitor to such website or online service, or as whose behalf such information is collected or maintained, or offers products or services for sale through the website or online service where such website or online service is operated for commercial purposes involving commerce among several states or within one or more foreign nations, yada yada yada. Pretty much summing this up, if there's any international trade happening or things cross state lines or territories or international, is an operator in this dance. So, for example, this is where Google, they operate in Wisconsin, Minnesota, California, everywhere in the United States and the world, pretty much. So they fall as an operator. And this will become apparent later on as we go through this document. So parents, now I don't like some wording, but because of rules and stuff, a person means any individual, partnership, corporation, trust, estate, cooperative, association, or other entity. Pretty much, if it exists, it's a person. Like this. So personal information is not limited to first and last name, physical address, contact information defined in this section, a screen or username which functions in the same manner as an online contact. So like at Wolfletech on Twitter is a username, technically. A telephone number, a social security number. If you can, don't give out your social security number online. Like, no one should ever really request it unless they, just preferably not. So anyway, a persistent identifier, a photograph, video, audio file where such file contains a child image or voice. So this one I will come back to. This is kind of a tricky one to interpret, and I'll tell you how we go about it in my workplace in a bit. So anyway, those are definitions. Keeps definitions. Third party photograph. Just keep going down. Doing this live. Alright, so definitions are point 2. Point 3. This is where all the juicy stuff in this regulation is. General requirements. It shall be unlawful for any operator of a website or online service directed to children. Keep in mind, directed to children. Or any operator that has actual knowledge that is collecting information or personal information from a child. To collect personal information from a child in a manner that violates the regulations prescribed under this part, generally under this part, an operator must, and this is where the COPPA regulations on YouTube come in. They provide notice on the website or online service of what information is collected from children, how it is used such information, and disclosure practices under this 312.4, which was the next section in here. Obtain verifiable parent consent prior to any collection, use, or disclosure in personal information from this child. So pretty much this is just making sure that anybody under the age of 13 is allowed to use YouTube or any website or technology as required. How we go about doing this at work. Now, my district does use Google services, Google Apps, and COPPA follows, we have to follow COPPA with that too. We actually have to have a parent consent form to technology, and that's where we get the verifiable parent consent prior to any collection use. Now, we're not allowed by Wisconsin state law to collect any information on or track anything except for purposes of that we legally have to. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole because this is a COPPA thing, not a Wisconsin state law thing. So we don't collect any information except for web page history, which is what we're allowed to by state. But we only do that if there's a problem or there's a very limited situations where we can actually look at the history too. So anyway, so verifiable proof, we have a consent form. Google just wants to make sure that, hey, my son, daughter, non-binary, wants to be able to use YouTube to watch videos. Baby Shark, anybody? Like, it's a good distraction. They just want to make sure the parents are okay that they're using the platform. It's kind of like a permission slip when you went on a field trip in school. Hey, can I go do this? Yes. Thank you. That's pretty much the same exact thing with this. To use an online service, you should have permission. All right. So, provide reasonable means of the information collected. Hey, this is what, and that consent form that we have for technology use, it covers that actually. It says, hey, some information like the history may be available for administrative purposes, for use to assist the students' learning, and for discipline purposes. We've had a case where a kid looks up like naughty things, and it's only like, hey, instead of being like, all right, you're banned from the computer, it's like, hey, is everything all right? We use it actually as a tool to help reach out to the kid, being like, trying to help them in life. That's something I cherish myself in, and that's why I'm at the building I work at, because I'm very good at doing things like this. So pretty much it just says, make sure that the parent knows what information is being disclosed, how it's being disclosed. Then if we get a question in our district, it gets relayed to our central office, and they know that these are the criteria that we use as technicians, because I'm a computer support technician. This is what we're allowed to do with it, and we don't get to disclose it outside the district unless it's through the central office, which then the lawyers are involved at that point. So pretty much it has to go through central office, lawyers, courts, etc. That's the only really case where we ever disclose any information, where we're legally required to by subpoena or something. It's very complicated. I'm not going to go any farther into that, but this is where COPPA comes in. So anyway, notice section 4. So this is pretty much, how are you telling the parent? How is it that they're supposed to do? So general principle of notice, it shall be obligated by the operator to provide notice and obtain verifiable parental consent prior to collecting, using, or disclosing personal information from child. Such notice must be clearly and understandably written, completed, and must contain no unrelated, confusing, or contradictory materials. So it just has to be clear and concise, saying, hey, we have this, hey, we may track you, but here's your rights. It has to be clear and concise. We can't fluff it up. You can't turn it down. And how Google's understanding that is like, all right, yeah, and I'll get more into the whole Google notice, why you have to select your videos here in a second. Now, keep in mind, I've been reading this all day, and it's about midnight, so I'm recording this for you guys' behalf, just to kind of go through the weeds with this. Pretty much a hyperlink says it has to be posted online. So there's a few cases where the content of the direct notice to the parent under this section, Google actually, for example, if somebody under the age of 13 gets on the platform somehow, which they've already put protections in where that's not possible, to my knowledge. If someone under the age of 13 gets on the platform, YouTube has to find their parent and get permission before they're allowed to actually do anything. And typically, the policy for most places, if you've noticed, like Facebook, says that you're allowed to have an account over the age of 13 because it doesn't fall under COPPA. If you notice that, and this is like Facebook is like the worst offender of this. They put it blatantly out there, like, hey, you have to be 13 to use the platform, because that way then we can avoid having to follow COPPA. Oh, imagine that. So yeah, it pretty much saying that they have to find the parent, and the parent has to have permission with that section. Once again, in a school district, we know who the parents are. We know who the legal guardians are too. As defined in the definitions, a parent can also be a guardian on Section 2. That being said, yeah, so pretty much as long as you have permission, you can do it. All right. So now I am looking for, so Section 5 is parental consent. How they can send it has to be signed. Provided that the operator... Alright. So there's a lot of things under general requirements. An operator is required to obtain verifiable parental consent before any collection, use, or disclosure of personal information from a child, including consent to any any material change in the collection, use, or disclose. Yada yada. This is mostly for the parents. This isn't for content creators. All right. The right for a parent to review personal information provided by a child. So this is pretty much if a child has decided to like send messages or something over the platform, the parent has access to them. Now only the parent and YouTube has this information, but YouTube can't hold on to the information due to the fact of this to all the stuff. Now, like I said, I recommend that you do read this yourself. I will drop a link to this section of this federal law regulations into the description. But anyway, this is where YouTube is required. So Section 7 is where YouTube is having this problem right now. And this is another reason why you have to select this content is for children. This content is not for children. Because it changes how their algorithm and ads and tracking, it changes all of those with your videos. And this is where the thing, for example, I'm going to just say this. It is possible for a child under the age of 13, to still find your video. As long as it doesn't have specific criteria that falls under, and then they also just don't track, like if you're small enough, you don't get ads. It changes what ads are shown for them, and also it does something different with how they are viewing your content, and how they log that. I believe the views count is it's not really a tracking, so they don't collect the data, so COPPA doesn't actually follow here. It just says that it's been viewed this time from the server. But anyway, Section 7. An operator is prohibited from conditioning a child's participation in a game, the offering of a prize, or another activity in child disclosing more personal information than is reasonably necessary to participate in such activity. Have you been noticing a lot more ads on YouTube? This is where that flag comes in. If it's made for a child, if your content is made for a child, you will not get any of those ads on your channel, because the ad system with an untracked user may not be able to determine if if the person watching the video who is not being tracked is a child or not. So it cannot entice them to be in a game. So this is where it changes the algorithm with ads, because the ads do a bidding war. So now if you do create content for children, you may have a slight decrease in ad revenue, but YouTube has plenty of advertisers that are allowed to like actually show ads to children. Now the other thing is state laws. This is where things get complicated. Some states don't allow ads to be shown from YouTube towards a child. This isn't in COPPA, so this doesn't apply here. And I know it doesn't apply to Wisconsin because our firewall at work actually has to block ads, as they could be a backdoor bad thing. It's Wisconsin state law with that stuff is interesting. But anyway, we have district-wide ad block because reasons. But anyway, I digress. An operator is prohibited from conditioning a child's participation in a game. You can't entice children to do an activity. Ads are a way that these app people have been doing that. And this is where this was an addition after like Candy Crush, where like, hey, you can pay money and get more gems, and you can do this forever, like, and keep going. But it may ring up on your parents' credit card that you spent a lot of money on this app. There's a big thing about that about 5 years ago. So that's another reason why YouTube's asking, hey, is this made for children? Because more than likely, if it's made for children, they'll direct it more at children, change the algorithm, and make it that way. Things change on their back end, and they want you to do the work for it. The operator must, so Section 8 is pretty much saying it must protect the data at all costs. It must take reasonable steps. Enforcement, subject to, once again, all the laws of the Act of 1998, so it's over 21 years old now. Now, I'm not going to go into safe harbor because it doesn't really apply to YouTube. Pretty much a generality of safe harbor is if a platform it has created a program that pretty much takes COPPA, interprets it slightly different, but makes the platform stronger per se, like they protect the protections of children under children 13 years or younger, then they're allowed to do a safe harbor where it's like, all right, you're exempt from COPPA for these reasons because you're strengthening these reasons. It's not a backdoor. It actually pretty much takes COPPA and just makes it improved. I have not had a case where a data group has done a safe harbor yet. So I'm ignoring that section. So anyway, that's all 9 pages of the printed document that I actually have printed out, and I was reading it all day. So how does this apply to YouTube? Well, once again, like I said, it changes how their algorithm is, but if you say that your channel is not intended for children, congratulations, nothing has changed. You still have your entire channel. You just have to make sure that a few things are kept in mind. So I mentioned identifiable photos and stuff. That's up here in this section. Okay, so a photograph, video, audio file where such contains children's image or voice. This is something you do have to worry about. So Now, in this case, where the whole COPPA uh, tracking thing, it's not something that you, content creator, has to worry about. This is more directed towards the kids that are on the platform. They could put up a profile picture of themselves, and this is a trackable thing from YouTube. But there is a secondary protection somewhere. I'm not sure what law, but if you have that, where it's something to do with, you have to have permission from the parent if a child is identifiable in one of your videos and they don't have permission from them to be on the platform. I ran into this once at work already. We have about 2% of our student population that has a non-disclosure or photos agreement. These are students where, even though it's only 2% of our 5,000 student population, we still have to look at every single photo, every single video for those 2%. And if they're in that photo, they're not allowed to be posted publicly, uploaded to social media, or displayed publicly for other students inside displays internally in the school district. The only exception to this rule is if the parent has given specific permission for said student for certain use cases. For example, in the yearbook, they may have their actual photo that they took during photo day in it, but they don't want any other photos of them anywhere else on the book. And I know 1% of that too. Well, half of them that do that have that type of an agreement. And this is something that we just get a list from our central office being like, these are the kids that you have to look out for. And we get there, because we're internal and we have to watch out for it. We do get a picture of them just so we know what they look like, so we watch out for them. Do you have to worry about that? No. Just get permission if you can. If it's an identifiable person. Like, if you just so happen, let's just say, because that's what I was doing today, if you're skiing and you catch the backside of a kid, just the image of them, there's no way that that's identifiable just by looking at it at that angle. But if you get their face or something, just be careful. YouTube just prefers you not having any children on your channels just because of that rule. So anyway, I hope that this last 30 minutes of reading through COPPA has helped. I know I'm a little bit ranting, but to be fair, I do this for a living, so I just want to make sure that I'm not a lawyer. This is how we interpret it in our in my work, and I just want to share the information with you. Stay calm. It's not the end of the world, and COPPA will actually make things better, because we're catching up. Children's need protection. GDPR covers a lot of the same thing in the European Union, so look at those regulations if you're in the UK. If you're elsewhere, check your local regulations, and when in doubt, talk to a lawyer. They know what they're doing. It costs a lot to get a lawyer, but hey, if you're concerned about something, always consult legal advice from somebody who knows better than a woo on a YouTube channel who works for a school district in the IT department. So anyway, bye for now. A woo together, community forever.